Testing, testing, testing. Testing, testing. All right. All right, there we go. What's up, everybody? Supreme Decisions here, and today I actually want to talk about the options that you have Okay. All right. Let me finish one more thing real quick. All right. That's done. What's up, everybody? Again, Supreme Decisions here. And as you see, we put up the super chat for those that want to donate during the show. Also, those that want to donate to the channel directly, you actually have Apple Pay, the Cash App, and the Zelle. So let's keep it going. I hope you had an opportunity to see to view the title, which is the Homeowners Association versus the Homeowner, fighting back with the Constitution. Now, the reason I'm actually doing this show is a couple weeks ago, I had literally probably about 10 to 15 people contact me in regards to issues they were having with their homeowners association, from here in Texas to down in Atlanta to Tennessee, a couple in California. And all of them, I explained to them the homeowners association is a contractual agreement, and that's how you would actually address it, depending on the violations that are going in that give you other options. And all of them, which was odd to me, you made the contact, you set up the consultation, they chose to go at it, on their own. Well, I had one lady come back, and she didn't realize what had happened was the homeowners association had went out and foreclosed. They had started the foreclosure process on her home because she was like, I'm just gonna wait for the letter. And I just sent her a video from another young lady from 2 years ago, had the same issue that she was having, literally the exact same issue, the exact same company in Atlanta, where she ended up fighting them. It took her 2 years to win. And what the homeowners association did, they actually just changed out the president. They refunded the money she had to pay as far as the legal fees, and they canceled the fines and dropped the foreclosure. And the fines would be the lien that they had put on the property. But what they did not do was stop her homeowners association payments. So now she ended up having back payments from when she was fighting them in court to keep her house. And these are the things that a lot of people get caught up in because they don't pay attention to or want to even listen to what actions or abilities they have to defend themselves. or even because it's a civil action, they think it's going to be handled. I hate to say it this way, but in a manner that's judicial, because again, it's still a money situation. Because the homeowners association are is literally just a group that's created through a contract, and you have to become a participant. You knows what I said. You have to become a participating party in that contract. Now, what most people don't understand is homeowners associations can violate civil rights. I'm going to say that again. Homeowners associations, when their actions violate your rights, they can violate your federal civil rights. And just like in criminal actions, you can actually hold them responsible and liable in federal court under the guise of 42 USC 1983 and the Fair Housing Act. Now, while there are no direct challenges or direct rulings against homeowners associations, there are rulings that give you leverage for the things that are done, and a lot of times it's even going under the due process clause, because even in civil actions, even in these contracts, you have to follow due process. And if it is not followed properly, because again, as much as I hate to say this, most people have no idea what the due process rights are or even how they are followed, because whether they're the actors, which is in this case the homeowners association, or the homeowners, most of them have no idea what they're legally able to do. Even had the one that the young lady won in Atlanta, the homeowners association had a law firm that sat on the board, and they violated this woman's rights, and then they pretended they had no idea, which then again gives you another form of recourse, because which this young lady is doing, and it's going after that law firm because they can be held liable through their insurance. But anyway, here's okay, let me give you a couple of examples. The Fair Debt Collection Actions, because these are challenges for your homeowners association. For abusive HOA debt collection or harassment, they too have to follow those guidelines. But again, like I said, most of them have no idea what those are. Due process. If a HOA takes actions without notice or opportunity to be heard, these are violations. Many states provide additional rights and against overreaching HOAs. And if your HOA acts under the color of state law and violates your constitutional rights, you have the right to sue them directly in federal court. Now, because they don't have the right to abuse you with collections. They don't have the right to just say everything that you're doing is a violation. And the biggest process of this is understanding that you have a right to fight back. Now, because you don't, I always tell everybody, make sure you get somebody to know what they're doing. Because even having a lawyer, or an attorney, I shouldn't say lawyer, I should use the word attorney because they are different. When you have an attorney, 90% of attorneys have no idea what the actual law is that's governing any process that they're doing. And that does not separate them from the HOA lawsuits, because HOAs do lose lawsuits. But here's the greater part, because just like they're not immune from any other type of lawsuit, there are a lot of settlements. Yes, they settle because, just to give you an example, I have one that I'm working with now, and we started pushing back. And on the pushback, They went from being very aggressive and talking about how they were going to kick them out the house to now they're calling on multiple lines, attempting to reconcile, to negotiate. And I told them, I said, well, here's the thing. The reason why they're attempting to negotiate now is because if you open up their books, which every state has a right, or every state has a statute that allows you to go into the books of the homeowners association that's charging you these fees and fines and find out where that money is going to and when it's spent and how it's used. Every state has it, even here in Texas, because even here in Texas, I had a young lady that was doing it, and she actually, over, because it's literally right down the street. They're building a bunch of new homes, and after the subdivision was complete, they're telling these people, "Oh, you're part of a homeowners association," when in fact they have never signed any agreement. But again, a lot of these people find out the hard way that they're ending up in court, and they have no idea why. And then you have lawyers here that do not take their cases, and then they put themselves behind the eight ball because you're not paying any fees, because you don't know who to pay the fees to, because you haven't signed up for anything, and then you're being bullied. Because ignorance is the most expensive thing that you'll carry around with you, because you're either going to spend time, or you're going to spend money, or you're going to spend both learning how to get around that. And that choice is going to always be yours. Now, if you ever felt bullied by your HOA, today we're going to break down your rights and how to fight back. Because even now, you're going to have civil rights challenges and using Supreme Court precedents and federal law. Notice I don't talk about a whole bunch of state stuff except for the fact that states have a remedy. I didn't talk about, because that's the first place you're going to go when the homeowners association, they're going to go to state court. You actually have grounds to take them to federal court, which nobody wants to go to, because you got to get a federal attorney. And in knowing that, you got to go with federal dollars. Nobody wants to do that. So going through that, the homeowners association, again, is just an association that's put together to kind of regulate what you are doing with your property, for the most part, to keep your neighborhood beautiful. That's supposed to be the context and the gist of the association. Now, what they end up doing in the neighborhood is operating as a private government, so to speak, because they're the ones who are making up the rules for which your entire neighborhood must abide by. They also make up the guidelines for enforcement. Generally, that's not done other than through fines, which then they can then bring in outsiders, such as, the court system. And then they force you into this thing called arbitration. Arbitration is an option. Always understand that. You have an option. They'll put it in there. It's an option for arbitration. You are never locked into arbitration. You always have an option to go to a higher court, which is federal court. But you have to be willing to do that, because just talking about it and just screaming and getting upset does nothing. Fighting them back and using tools against them is what empowers you. Now, an overseeing of the homeowners fines, because you have a violation that's in their guidelines, which you may or may not know, they have the option with those fines to levy liens against your property that you're paying a mortgage on. And guess what? It doesn't stop just because they're placing a lien on your property. And you have to go through the process of paying whatever things that are set forth and lifting those liens, and then paying these fees that most people have no idea what these fees are going to, because again, they don't understand the legal construct of what this is or how this is. And the biggest thing is, even in a contract, everything in that contract is not binding, they're not legal, and not all of them are constitutional, which they have to be. And this is why, again, you bring someone in if you're having issue, and they can review these contracts. And when they do that, you can then understand you have an opportunity and options to fight back and set up a strategy for you. Now, through the Constitution, when they take you to state court, they automatically set the precedent, because we talked about that yesterday. They set the precedent for the application of the 14th Amendment, which means the Constitution is applicable through the 14th Amendment of the guidelines. So that contract is now a state contract. Always remember that. Once they make that move, you now have the weapon of the 14th Amendment. Now, there are certain things that they say you can't have. Like, let's say you have a flag in your yard and they don't like the flag. Or let's say you have a political poster in your property, they don't like the poster. Those are free speech options which you can attest to and also fight in federal court. Fifth Amendment, which is the most egregious one because that's the most common one, which is due process, because they don't give you proper notice and they'll just tell you, oh, you owe these fines, or you'll find out that you have a lien on your property. You've never been notified to even being in the homeowners association or being notified that there are fines and late fees attached to something that they've already given you. Now, again, these can also be attached to the 42 USC 1983 when homeowners associations act like the state, because again, they are all part of a self-governing body. So they then become the government through that contract. And that's how you use that, because the same way you would go after a government official, you will go after the homeowners association the exact same way. And that goes for everybody, including everybody that's on the board, and especially the president. All of them become liable, and you can then hold them all individually liable for the actions that are done. Because just to give you an example, in Atlanta, they had partnered with a tow truck company. They were going into the properties, and the tow truck company was just towing people's cars. They were literally going. There was video of the tow truck company employees going onto people's properties and towing their cars, because they had a rule within the guidelines that said your car cannot be outside on your driveway if you have a garage for more than 1 hour. So they would just go and take people's cars. Not only would they charge them an impound fee, they would then charge them a HOA fee. And if you don't pay both of those, one, you don't get your property back, and then two, they actually were starting to sell property. And again, that's unconstitutional because they don't have a right to your property. It is still yours. There's a process. And when they were doing that, that became a violation. Not only was the young lady able to sue the HOA and the board members in their individual capacity, they were able to sue the tow truck company, because most of the employees, they're $15 an hour employees. Nobody really got anything that you can take, and you can name them, but they're still under the guise of the actual tow truck company, as well as the law firm. The law firm, their attorneys can be held liable civilly as well, individually. That's part of that HOA, and the law firm's insurance is now at stake. Fair Housing Act. It protects against discrimination of your HOA rules. Now, this is, again, part of the contract. Most people don't. This is not a common one. Now, they exist. Let's put it this way. They exist because one of those is just not one that generally people will put in writing to just completely incriminate themselves. And Fair Debt Collection Protection Act protects against HOA's aggressive debt collection, which I just spoke about, which they would go and take somebody's vehicle out of their yard, charge them an impound fee, and plus a HOA fine, and then force them to pay that prior to getting them their property. That's an aggressive act. That is a violation of the Fair Debt Collection Act. And when we're going through these cases, You have things that go back to 1948 and 1946. It's Shelley v. Kramer. You can't enforce racist HOA covenants. Now, again, not one that's widely used, but it's there because it happens. Marsh v. Alabama. It's a private town, equal public rights. Now, if they're taking away your actual rights, that is a violation, and you can use that. Brentwood Academy v. TSSA in 2001. Entwinement makes private actors public, just like I just spoke about. The HOA, now because of the contract and them using it for an illegal activity for the most part, and they are then filing in state court, they become government actors. So now they are individually liable for the actions that are done by the HOA. Now, this is one, the Village of Willowbrook versus Olick. It's a 2000 case. Equal protections, even if you are a class of one. You don't have to have a lot of people in your case to be discriminated against. And that's what most people actually don't understand. You don't need a whole bunch of people to be part of a discriminated class. Or in the Willowbrook case, it was one side of literally a water pipe. People on one side of a water pipe was treated one way, and the house on a property on the other side of the water pipe was treated differently. And that was illegal because it is still a discriminatory act. Equal protection is provided for both parties. Trafficante v. Metropolitan Life. Fair housing gives standing to residents. And that's one of the ones, the Fair Housing Act. And Lingo v. Chevron, property rights and regulatory taking. That's the context of whenever they were coming on the property and taking other vehicles and then charging you fees and fines at the same time before you get your property back. And that's pretty much extortion, which is illegal. And each case is one that can be used per situation. Now, one of your cases may not fall in one of those regular cases, but it will fall under one of the federal violations or the statutes. So again, you have USC 1983, the Fair Housing Act, the Fair Debt Collection Act, and again, they're going to do things where they want you to go into mediation. You actually can file things such as injunctions and filing complaints with HUD. Now, I'm gonna talk about that for a second because I'm gonna go into some other stuff, but I want to talk about that. One of the things I did in my early life, I did skip tracing. And the context was I worked directly for HUD. And most people didn't understand, whenever you got certain types of loans, right? 15, 30 years, if you was a veteran, whatever, and you went and bought a house with one of these loans, there was a bond that was put on your property. And generally it is used with your down payment. I'm gonna say that one more time. When you purchase a property and you're using certain loans, there's a bond put on your property and is usually paid for through your down payment. So your down payment is pretty much like a savings account. So now, whenever your loan is either paid off through actual just paying it over time, or you refinance your property, that bond is yours. So the thing was, I would literally get a list of at least 100 people every day to contact from HUD. And I would call them from basically the numbers that they had or whatever. And I was, it's a refinance. Okay, they're still at this property. Oh, it was a sale. the house was sold. Okay, so now I'll just do a little light looking, or even a death, an estate sale. All those things, that money goes back to the person. Now, it amazed me the amount of people that would actually answer the phone. And I would tell them, hey, my name is Richard, I'm from HUD. And I don't have a HUD house. I didn't get a HUD loan. And I explained to them, no, you don't have a HUD loan. You have a loan that deals with HUD, and HUD owes you money. Oh, this is a scam. I said, well, how is it a scam if I'm giving you money? I'm sending you money. I just want to verify the address. I'm going to verify your information. You don't give me anything. I'm going to verify your, and people will hang up on me. You're not telling me anything. I'm telling you everything that I have in front of me. And nope. And the ones that did get their money back, or a good portion of it back, because my commission off of a return was anywhere between 10% and 20%. So again, I wanted to find these people so I can give them their money. Because the more people I found to give them their money, the more money I made. And HUD literally has most people didn't understand when Donald Trump spoke about the fund that was just sitting there. There is a surplus of money in HUD. And the reason it's there is because when people are paying off their houses or refinancing their houses, and they had a particular loan that dealt with HUD, HUD gives you back your down payment, or gives you back the majority of your down payment. And most people never get it. And that's the craziest thing to me, because even whenever, again, I was contacting them, and I would verify their information. And I would tell them, nope, you're not giving me any banking information. We're sending you a check. I'm verifying that this is your address. This is your full name. This is the date that your house was closed on. Nope, I'm not going to do that. Okay, cool. We'll keep the money. The problem is HUD keeps the money. I didn't get any. But the fact that a lot of people don't understand how HUD works, and how even contacting them is dealing with protection, it'll be one of those things that most people, if any, actually understand the context of the things that I'm saying right now, because it's probably going over most people's head, because you're thinking HUD house, you're thinking a house that was like $20,000-$30,000 that was Habitat for Humanity or something, and not really in a bad neighborhood. No, people in $1 million houses will have HUD loans that they put money down on, and those are the ones I wanted the most. Most of them didn't care. And because the more money you put down, the more money I made. And the thing is, most people don't know they have money sitting out there from property that they purchased years ago and never collected that money back when the house was sold or refinanced. So you have options. You have a civil court, which the homeowners association generally applies for, because they want you to go through mediation. And if you choose not to go through mediation, they force you to attempt with regular court. You got your injunctions, and you can file your complaints with HUD. But the biggest thing is to gather evidence. Every letter that you get, every fine that you get, every board meeting, and if you're able to get the minutes from those meetings, you actually are weaponizing your defense. And even going through the challenge of the HOA, it's understanding nothing that you're going to do is going to be a quick fix if they don't want it to be fixed. Because most of these, again, they run them like governmental towns or government-run towns. They are doing it for revenue. And a lot of these HOA presidents are pocketing the money. This is why you have to know that you have the ability to request and file the right places to get copies of what they are doing with that money. And because even with this young lady that I spoke about in Atlanta that sued and won, one of the things she did, they ended up giving her a list of all the fines that they collected from the neighborhood and what they had already done. One of the things they did, they gave her a map, and they told her, This place is I forgot what I hate to call it. It was supposed to be a man-made koi pond or something. It was actually just a lot where the sewage ran to, but it was labeled as a pond, which they had spent $100,000 on. Where was that money at? And then they were talking about the playground. The playground has supposed to have been expanded. The playground had one swing and one slide. What was it expanded to? And they were giving $70,000 for the playground. So again, what she did, she took pictures, she took video, and she used that as evidence against them to win. The problem was she didn't understand how to do all the steps by herself. And now she's got help suing them in federal court because, again, for 2 years she fought them and did not know that she can actually do all this extra stuff to actually stop them from doing it. And finally, the biggest thing on here is understanding, like I said, the biggest expense you're ever going to have, even dealing with the HOA, is going to be not knowing or ignorance, because it's going to be expensive. And the more ignorant you are, the more expensive it is generally, because when this young lady, she got into this house, I believe she was she worked at the CDC, so she was making decent money. But what happens is now, not only are you going to work, but you're also worried about home and you're going to court. So now your days are shortened. Your health is worse because now you're not sleeping, you're not eating like you regularly would. It disrupted her actual everyday patterns. These things, when they start getting you stress related, this starts to deal with your health. It starts to ruin your actual body, and it goes and it takes apart your mental. And these are the things that why you need to understand what it is that you have and your abilities. You have to know your rights. And the HOAs are not above the law. Federal law protects you. Always remember that. And I got a little pamphlet that if you call, I got you. We're going to do 5 steps to legally push back against your HOA. And this is one of the things that I can do to actually set it up for you to be able to actually know what it is that you can actually do to push back a little bit. And the biggest thing is now, you can, if you actually have an issue with your HOA, put it down in the comments, some of the things that you're doing, or contact me directly. I've left my email in the chat. It's also in the description. If these things are coming to you and you want to fight back and you have an inch of understanding that, one, do you have a case? That's the great part of the consultation, because our originals talk, I don't charge for. But you have to know at least what direction or look for some guidance, because if you go in blind, you're going to stay that way in most cases, and it's going to cost you. Whether you do it with me or you do it on your own, it's going to cost you. So keep that in mind, because knowing is only part of the battle. Fighting back is the actual action. So see you guys in the next live.